or how many people are aware of this. Grandpa Patterson, who would be part of the Ferguson clan through his wife, left South Carolina somewhere around 1920 or so. And it happened after a very, very brutal beating of a black woman.
Yes.
At that point, he made the determination that he was getting his family out. He took his family to Pennsylvania. Now, the Duckett part of that extended family didn't leave for another 13 or 14 years. And when my mother used to tell the story about how the family came up here, it was really hilarious because you couldn't imagine how so many people fit in a single car. And then they got stuck on the railroad tracks and thought that they were all going to meet their maker. I mean, so it was just, this really unbelievable story. And then they ended up at 5.5 Utica Avenue, and it was the first time that they saw roaches, and then they all wished that they were back down in South Carolina. But both of these families start out in Clinton, South Carolina. And some of us have made the pilgrimage to where our families, first started out. And it's really something we really should think about, getting a bus and going down and really visiting, because it's really an amazing thing. Now, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or step on anybody's toes, but you have to remember that so many of us in this room actually were born in New York and raised between Brooklyn and Queens. So when you go to Clinton, South Carolina, it's a real culture shock. Because even if you go to what is supposed to be the capital, okay, of South Carolina, it's like, okay, it's like country. So it's a real shock, and but it's an amazing thing because you really stop and wonder how this very rural place that really seems to have not much of anything brought forth so many talented people who gave so much to their families and society. You would really have to go south to where my husband's parents, his mother was from Mississippi. My husband cried. He couldn't believe, it was like, it's an unbelievable thing. And I think young people don't realize how far their parents and grandparents have actually come. It's just absolutely amazing. But anyway, fast forward to, I guess it was somewhere between 33 and 34, because my mother was 13 when they came north. A few years later, Grandpa, Mr. Benny, came home and said, I saw one of Sam Patterson's boys on the corner of one of the, I don't remember the name of the street, but on one of the Brooklyn streets. He came up and said, I saw Sam Patterson's boy, and I told him to come up to visit. And that is how, that is how Uncle Oliver, it was Uncle Oliver for me. Some of you is your grandfather, your father, you probably didn't even know, sister. That is how those families were reunited, and then a romance began between Aunt Helen and Uncle Oliver. So there's a blast from the past for you. In any case, what we are going to do now is to start the ceremony, and I want to apologize. Under the 7 principles, there are 2 meanings that are missing. You have to understand, Eddie and I were in Brooklyn last night for a New Year's Eve, New Year's celebration. I got to bed at 3:30 in the morning and got up at 6 o'clock to do this program, so you're lucky if that's the only thing that's, that's incorrect. Kwanzaa was initiated by Ron Karenga in 1966. For those of us who were around during that period, we know that it was in the midst of the civil rights struggle. But by this time, you had a growing awareness of the African heritage, something that so many of our people had tried to escape. I'm sure that those of you who are in your 50s and beyond remember the time when we didn't talk about what our African heritage happened to be. We were trying to lift up the Native American heritage that we had. So somebody was Native American, yeah, usually Cherokee. But we do happen to have Cherokee in our family. And we do know that because I know that I'm 12% Native American. But it was a time when we were trying to get away from being African. So at that same time, we were coming into a new awareness of ourselves. It's the period that you start to have the Black Studies movement. You have the first Black Studies programs being initiated like in 1968. Hunter College, the department that I teach in, is going to have its 40th anniversary in September, started in 1969. So all of this greater awareness was coming about. And Karenga, who had an organization called US out in California, decided that Black people needed to have a celebration that they could come together around, something to pull them together in ritual, in remembrance. And he developed Kwanzaa. It is not an African celebration. It is based on principles that come out of the African tradition, okay? A lot of people criticize, make all kinds of negative comments with regard to Kwanzaa. They say, oh, it's just made up and all that. But you have to understand that everything has a beginning. Everything that is a tradition came out of something that happened that caused the tradition to be initiated. So we're coming together at this point to celebrate Kwanzaa. I also want to point out to you that African Americans had a number of traditional observances. In the New York area, you had Pinkster Day, which was the day of Pentecost. You also had something called Election Day that the Black population came together and celebrated. And in other areas in the United States, you had more other regional celebrations. The reason why we have no memory of these is because the authorities were afraid when we came together in celebration, and they eliminated them. We were not allowed to have them. All you need is a generation to pass when things are not celebrated, and they're gone. So the fact that we have Kwanzaa now is very important. Started out as something for African Americans. It is celebrated actually now across the diaspora. So people in the Caribbean, you have communities in the Caribbean that celebrate it. You have communities, African diasporic communities in Europe, and even in some African communities in Africa, they're celebrating Kwanzaa. Okay, so something that people tried to say, is really nothing, it's just made up, is something that has spread around. We did not allow people to put it down, and we have carried it forth. So we'd like to really continue this tradition, make sure that the children are aware of it so that they will grow up knowing and understanding their heritage and being proud of their race and the accomplishments of their people. And Umoja is unity. Having unity in the community, among people of African descent, and maintaining our family structures. Very, very important. Umoja. Can everybody say? Umoja. The next candle is Kujichagulia. 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 Yes. That means self-determination. Having the ability to determine what you're going to do with your lives, the kind of course of action that you're going to take, not allowing outside forces to determine what you're going to be and how you're going to live your life. Kujichagulia, self-determination. The next principle is Ujima. Ujima. Collective work and responsibility. Collective work and responsibility. We are all responsible for each other. And we are responsible for the way that our lives go to a large degree. Not that will not be outside forces that will impact, but you are really responsible for doing the right thing, okay? And also, it's very important that we work collectively to maintain the community. Ujima. The next one is Ujamaa. Ujamaa. Cooperative economics. Cooperative economics. Instead of people always going into business just for themselves, as an individual or an individual family, it's talking about pooling your resources and extending it so that it goes to the greater good. The next principle, one that from the time that I was an undergraduate really stuck with me, and as a result, my first child was named for this principle. And so many of you know her, you know what the principle is. Nia. Nia, purpose. It actually means purpose and will in Swahili. The sixth principle is kuumba. Kuumba. And the meaning of kuumba is creativity. Creativity. We are a very, very creative people. Very creative. In the arts, in music, in dance. I mean, in just every sector, we are represented. And it also means being creative enough that when you have very little food, you know how to stretch a pot. Yeah. I have just a little anecdotal story to tell you. When my father passed away in 1986, Eddie and I went over to visit my Aunt Sis, who was next to my father in age. And we were asking my aunt, how was it growing up? My father's family was from Barbados. So I asked her, how was it growing up, the child of immigrants? And what was it like growing up during the Great Depression? And she told me, she said, Joanne, she said, we knew that there was a depression going on, but we never really felt it. She said, because your grandmother used to bake her bread. My grandmother, every time you went to her house, and sister can attest to this, you leave with coconut bread. She said, your grandmother used to make coconut bread, and she would sell the coconut bread. She had friends from the South who would bring grapes, and she would make wine and sell it to the Irish cops on the beat in Brooklyn. And she made enough money so that the family was never hungry. So that's creativity.